Welcome to Comic Tropes. I'm your host, Officer Chris. Today, we're going to announce the winner of the first and possibly only Comic Tropes Crappy Comics contest. The winner wins this unused roll of toilet paper, which Marvel Comics actually produced and features an original Spider-Man/Hulk comic book. All right, I got a lot of beautiful entries. It was very difficult, but ultimately I did have to choose a winner, and I decided to go with Brad Glynn's entry, which was the first and really only appearance of Lady Cop. Let's get into it. Here's the cover from DC Comics back in July of 1975. We have a dramatic shot of the titular Lady Cop herself fighting a random guy with a chain. This scene does not take place within the issue, by the way. It's worth noting that this is issue 4. I know it says first issue special up here, but that was the title of the comic, as in every issue was a brand new idea. This was DC basically daring readers to read whatever they threw at them. It only lasted 13 issues. That said, there were a couple issues by Jack Kirby, and a fun one by Bob Haney and Ramona Fradon, reuniting for a new Metamorphose story, a character they created. Mike Grell's character Warlord first appeared in issue 8, but it was already scheduled to launch in an ongoing title that same month. Back to the cover, this is my favorite part. If you read Lady Cop and you're curious, well, which of these two is Lady Cop? I just can't tell. Well, see up here? They've helpfully labeled her head as Lady Cop. So the answer is this is Lady Cop. This one. This book is written by Robert Kanigher, who wrote and edited tons of DC Comics and is arguably best known for introducing the Silver Age versions of Flash and Wonder Woman, as well as being the co-creator of Batman villain Poison Ivy. Robert was 60 when he wrote this book, so you can definitely anticipate that it will have a lot of really accurate street lingo, a lot of modern-day slang that people absolutely use. To give this book one credit, the art is by a guy named John Rosenberger. He passed away only 2 years after this came out due to cancer. And he didn't really co-create any super memorable characters, but he was a very talented artist that worked at DC for a long time in superhero books and romance titles. Seriously, he's basically a forgotten artist that was incredibly talented. I guess that's all I can say. He was incredibly talented. But anyway, let's read the book itself. It tries to be progressive, and it's only about 10% successful. There are 2 short stories in this comic about Liza Warner, who becomes Lady Cop. The first one is Liza's origin, and it starts with her hiding under a bed while 2 of her roommates are murdered by a man in cowboy boots, who leaves behind Ace of Spades playing cards. Later, the police take her witness testimony, and she tells them about the Ugly Boot Killer. A female police officer tells Liza that she has an incredible eye and encourages her to join the police force. So she does. Here we see Liza in a class about how to use a firearm. 2 strange things about this. There's another 2 female police officers in the class. What do they get for code names now that Lady Cop is taken? And second, Liza never gets to carry a gun. You see, it was a trend by the mid-70s to start seeing more and more women as actual patrol officers, but it was still a relatively new thing. In the 60s, women started working more for the police in undercover positions, working with Vice, and by 1968, that was the first time a city allowed female police officers to be patrol officers, to actually walk the streets and have the same responsibilities. The Civil Rights Act had an amendment in only 1972 that barred gender discrimination and allowed women to finally advance as police officers. So it was still pretty new by 1975 to see this stuff. That said, I think the reason this comic came into existence was probably the popular TV show Policewoman, starring Angie Dickinson. That lasted 4 seasons, and it started just the previous year. It was a huge hit, and I think it's what inspired Robert Kanigher to go down a similar path with this comic. Over the course of 2 panels, Liza learns how to shoot and gets a PhD in karate, and then it's time for graduation. Wouldn't you know it, some insane guy who flunked out of the police academy runs up with a grenade. This never happened to Mahoney in the Police Academy movies. Liza karates him and throws the grenade into a trash can, saving everyone. That's her origin. Now on to the crazy stuff. The second story starts in the middle of the action. Liza is breaking up what seems to be an attempted rape. Liza points out that the girl is underage, telling the assailant that he could have the book thrown at him for that. Liza, attempted sexual assault is a problem no matter what age of the victim, but I gotta say, artist John Rosenberger doesn't exactly help things because the way he draws this underage girl, I don't know, it doesn't seem exactly underage. This book throws a lot of confusing imagery. It's got women in, victim situations, but then they're also drawn to be very sexy. Case in point, the next panel. Now there's a second thug that pins Liza's arms, and apparently some of the buttons have popped off her top. That part's for Dad when he reads the comics to the kids. Then we get some hip slang of the day like, "Watch me heat up the fuzz." And Liza karates the criminal and walks them to a patrol car. One of the nameless criminals calls her Lady Cop. Does this mean that he gave her her famous name? As she walks away, the criminal shouts, "You can't bust me up for kissing a cop." You know what? Turns out you can. In fact, if you try to force yourself on a police officer, you're very likely to get arrested. Don't believe me? Try kissing a police officer, see what happens. Liza walks her beat, keeping an eye out for the underage girl that was getting assaulted, who has run away. Along the way, she kindly buys some ice cream for a local girl, and the ice cream vendor also calls her Lady Cop. My favorite part of that panel is the question mark that the vendor has there. It's like he's going, "Sure thing, Lady Cop?" Like, this is the most mind-blowing thing possible, for there to be a female police officer. Liza's not even the first female police officer on this force, since another woman recommended that she join the force. I mean, did Liza just send out a press release saying like, "Hey, I'm a new police officer, call me Lady Cop"? Liza happens to walk upon the underage girl purely by chance. She's on the phone with her boyfriend and learns that he has a sexually transmitted disease. She instantly assumes she must have it too and runs away distraught. So if she assumes she also has VD, that means she's sexually active with a boyfriend, and we know that she's underage. Does this mean that Liza's going to go after the boyfriend for statutory rape? Never addressed. Oh, and for my younger viewers, that device that the girl was on, that was called a payphone. See, back in the day, we could put coins in this device and make phone calls to one another right there on the public city streets. Is what we did before we texted one another. Before Liza can chase after the girl, she's interrupted by a random crime taking place in what I'm going to have to say is a much more insane city than Batman's Gotham City. A shop owner is stabbed by a thief who is the third person this day to call Liza Lady Cop. With a third person calling her Lady Cop, this is starting to feel like the town got together for some sort of make-a-wish situation. They were all talking that morning like, "Hey, pretend to commit some crimes and let her beat you, and just call her Lady Cop. It'll make her feel real good about herself." The thief waves his knife and says that Liza should stay at home washing dishes or sewing socks. Big mistake. Liza uses the rarely seen form of martial arts that is hat-based and defeats the thief. Then she goes to the shop owner who has been stabbed and tries to save him with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Now, I'm not an EMT, I'm obviously a hot cop. But folks, if you see somebody bleeding, I recommend applying pressure and stopping the bleeding. You can always try making out with the victim afterwards. More police help arrest the thief and take the victim to the hospital. An EMT offers to take care of Liza's scratch, but she's so tough she says she'll finish her duty. At the end of the day, her boyfriend swings by and they begin making out right there on the streets in front of her co-workers because Liza is a professional. Liza heads to the beach with her boyfriend Hal. He tells her to quit her job because he's tired of being teased by his friends for having a girlfriend that works. She shuts him up by kissing him. This is what I mean when I say the book is sort of trying to be progressive, but basically fails. The guy is a wimp. He's a terrible boyfriend, whining that he has a girlfriend that works. Liza's beautiful. How about you just suck it up? But instead, he's going to whine, and she just takes it. She just kisses him. Whatever. We're about to enter the final act. Let's just wrap it up. Liza happens to stumble across the girl from earlier, who is now thinking of jumping into a river to end it all. Fortunately, Liza points out that she can simply go see her doctor to get treated for the undefined venereal disease. The big problem is she's upset because her father won't understand that she's sexually active. Liza says to give him a chance, but the girl doesn't really get to make a choice because her father happens to wander over. She explains what happens, he gets furious, and he takes it out on Liza by punching her across the face, which for some reason makes her head snap towards the punch. But she's so tough she doesn't even react in the next panel, shaming the dock worker and asking how his late wife would treat their daughter. He is shamed and he embraces his daughter. With that problem resolved, a new criminal runs up to attack her and instead trips and takes them both into the water. He can't swim, so Liza saves his life. After her crazy day, Liza looks up to the big city and wonders to herself if she'll ever catch the killer in the cowboy boots. The answer is no, she won't, because Liza didn't appear in comics again for 31 years, and at that point it was really only a cameo in an issue of All New Adam, where she is now the chief of police of Ivy Town. She did also have 2 appearances on the TV show Arrow. In the first appearance, she was a corrupt cop that Green Arrow busts, and in the second appearance, she breaks out of jail with 2 other criminals that Green Arrow immediately puts right back in jail. The book's biggest crime is simply being dated, but that does make for an entertaining read these days. The problem is they try to be progressive, but they don't even quite get halfway there. Liza is great at stuff like karate, but she's pretty terrible at stuff like statutory rape laws and stopping bleeding. Anyway, it's like if you compare her to other comics of the day, you know, Batman gets Robin and Alfred, and she gets Hal, the insecure boyfriend. It just isn't quite on the same level. She isn't quite given the tools to succeed as a character. That said, there were a lot of other great additions, great contributions by other people. These probably will make for future episodes. I sincerely appreciate that so many of you sent in some really weird comics. Thank you so much. I had a lot of fun reading them. I had a lot of fun making this episode. Before we go, let's take a look at what kind of fan art came in this week. Brian Hodge sends in this look at me, and what he says is my spider sona. I'll take his word on that. Edward Dillon has this gorgeous piece that reminds me of the Art Nouveau movement. George Giparu returns with a piece satirizing Jim Lee's techniques, and there's a link to George's webcomic. Joe Offit made a piece based on my recent Christmas episode, as well as my trope of starting my episodes like a sitcom. John Dupree returns with a similar idea and a lot of Christmas fun. I love the color. I love this piece, John. Nikos Stavrianos delivers this great artwork featuring me with all the superhero accessories you could ever wish for, and there's Nikos' Instagram account if you'd like to see more. Finally, viewer Eric Burns sends in artwork by his 6-year-old daughter Kara, who drew me and Infotron flying around. It is fantastic. All right, folks, that was some fantastic fan art. If you'd like to have your fan art shown on this show, as long as it has something to do with this show, just send it to this address, comictropes@gmail.com, and every week I'll randomly pull out a winner who will win a Gachapon prize. I picked these up in Japan, and let's see who won this week. By the way, the Gacha Pony machine there was donated to us by Lunarshine, so check them out. Got 7 numbers here. Gonna drop them in. Shake it up. We've got number 4, so let me look over here. That is Joe Offit. Joe, you have won the Gachapon prize of the week. Let's check out what it is. And remember that Brad Glynn wins this toilet paper. That's pretty cool too. All right, here we go, Joe. Wow, I can't quite tell. Oh, it's some sort of Gundam. It's like a chibi Gundam. Maybe you can't make that out too well, but it's very colorful. Joe, let me get your mailing address. Same thing with you, Brad, and I've got some prizes to send out. Folks, thank you so much for watching. The rest of this month, I'm planning on doing a theme. We're going into X month. Everything is going to be in some way related to X-Men stuff. So, please stick with me, and until we meet again, keep reading comics.